Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, folks. Michael Zuber, one rental at a time, and we have the one and only and fan favorite, Mr. Brian Leba. How you doing, sir?
I'm fantastic. What's up, everyone? How are you?
Man, I appreciate you coming back. We are unfortunately going to miss you. We had originally had you lined up to come to the Fresno event on November 12th, which I was excited about. The audience was excited about, but scheduling snafus have occurred, and apparently you have a wedding to go to or something. So we're
Weddings
not
and
going to be able to
funerals.
see you on the 12th.
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. But the good news is you have me here now in perpetuity. So you can always go back and replay this video.
Exactly. And what you and I had planned to do on the 12th, because again, we were already starting to make plans for this, was we were going to compare Vegas today with Vegas 06, 08, 10, right? The crash. And the reason we wanted to do this is you and I are both hearing from people talking about a crash today. We have also had conversations over the years that Vegas is the canary in the coal mine. Why does Mike Zuber follow Vegas? Because as Vegas goes early, I can make pivots in my market. That's why we started talking years ago. So I think talking about reminding folks what happened in 08 is interesting. We're going to use real numbers, real transactions, just have a real heartfelt
Yeah.
conversation. And then we're going to talk about how's this set up today? Is it the same? Is it different? What's going on? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I mean, I think for your audience out there, this is gonna be one of the best videos. I really think this is gonna be knowledgeable because, some of you were alive and unfortunately suffered through these times, but a lot of your younger investors weren't really cognizant of these days. And a lot of what you may read, anecdotal stories, a lot of it sometimes is revisionist history. So it's really important to get the real understanding of what was going on. And, in preparation for this interview, I really wanted you guys to understand what's more important to understand in this one particular scenario isn't so much the crash, which is what we're basically discussing. It's more important to understand how we got here. So to understand how the market crashed then and now, we also have to understand how we inflated, this bubble. So that's what we're going to really emphasize today is explaining these differences between 2008 and now, because it'll be very evident by the end of this video how different these two scenarios are. The only thing they have in common is that prices are going down. But beyond that, there's not very many parallels.
I think you're absolutely right. And again, talking a little bit before we hit record, it is really going to help people understand the difference between, cheap money, right, and easy money. And I think that's going to be a big difference. But let's at least get into this. So let's date the top of last time and let's date the bottom, just so people see the scale and duration. Because I think another thing that a lot of these folks that didn't really go through it, they didn't realize how long it was. They act like this thing happened in 90 days and it was years in the making. So let's
Yeah.
get the date of the peak and the date of the trough, and then let's really set up how it
Okay.
all started.
And like you just alluded to, that's the revisionist history that really is never discussed. And keep in mind, everyone, we are talking specifically Las Vegas. We were the epicenter for this crash. We took it harder than anyone in the country. So if you're living in Minnesota, this is going to be mind blowing to you because you didn't likely experience anywhere near this level of severity that we experienced. So suffice to say, we peaked here in Las Vegas in June of 2006. The median price hit $315,000. Now, what's funny is while everyone is complaining about how high the prices are today, et cetera, if you adjust for inflation, forget about this year's ridiculous inflation. That $315,000 16 years ago is like $400,000 today. So when you look at it truly objectively, with inflation calculated into it, we really have not adjusted tremendously from 2006. That's how astronomical pricing really rose to give you
Yeah.
some context.
Yeah.
So the peak was June of 2006. Now, the trough was in January of 2011, where, according to Sales Track, we dropped to $109,000. Now, yeah, that's, 65% drop.
Out. That's it. But again, that's roughly speaking 5 years. These people talking about a
Yes.
housing crash of just crazy numbers. And it doesn't happen that way. Even in the most epic bubble of all bubbles, it was a 5 year
Right.
death by 1,000 cut, just constant drip, drip, drip.
Right. And as we get into this video a little bit more, you'll understand why it took 5 years to clean up this mess, because it was a very difficult and deep, complicated mess. So again, 5 years is very different than what we're going to experience, and we'll explain why now. So like Michael alluded to earlier and what we discussed in the beginning, when I tried to break this down for you guys to understand, to me, it really boiled down to two major factors. Back then, it was about easy money. And then the second part has to do with speculation. These are two factors that we don't have today, and these are very dangerous factors. So think of it like Bitcoin to a degree, right? 5 years ago, how many of you ever knew an international currency trader, right? I have one buddy who got his master's and was an international currency trader and worked on in San Francisco dealing with pension funds and dealing with currencies. It's the only dude I've ever known that actually was an international currency trader. Now, everyone and everyone's mother is an international currency trader because they do Bitcoin and this and this and this, right? Anytime you have that kind of a scenario, not everyone is a genius at trading international currency. Just like back in 2003 to 2006, not everyone was savvy with real estate investing. And I mean, to put it in a context, the iPhone didn't come out until June of 2007, guys. That's a different world we were living in. No Zillow, none of this. The internet existed, but we didn't have online websites where you could do all this copious amounts of research. Completely different world. It was a lot of elbow grease to be any kind of intelligent investor. So let's talk about the easy money. If you are a younger investor, you don't know what was going on back then. Back in the early 2000s, we had loans called NINA loans, no income, no assets. Literally, we used to say if you could fog a mirror, you could get a loan. And that's not even an exaggeration. I'll be honest, my first home, I never would have qualified for, but they abused a platform called stated income loans. So stated income loans back then were created for people that were self-employed that hid their income. So just like pretty much everyone on this channel, our goal is to make as much money and pay as little amount of taxes as possible through legal routes. Well, the problem with that, as you guys might know, is that if your income shown is so low, it's very difficult to qualify. So these stated income loans allowed people like doctors, self-employed individuals to state their income. And as long as your credit score was good, as long as you had some assets, then the bank would kind of look the other way, charge you a couple points on the interest rate, and you were on your merry way. Now, obviously, you know, when you open that door, people are going to step through it. And it didn't take long for this to be abused. So what started off as a really good loan program for specific individuals became completely and utterly widespread. And as prices started to rise, people really didn't qualify. So for instance, for myself, for a lot of you guys out there that are going to house hack, basically that's what I was doing. My first home, I did not qualify for. I didn't qualify for. I went on a stated income loan, but I had two dudes living with me, and I knew that I would pay that mortgage because no matter what, I was going to rent rooms out. I was going to have income. That doesn't count. Your business plan doesn't count towards qualifying, but I knew that it was sustainable because I knew that I would supplement that mortgage. But technically I didn't qualify. Now that gets abused more and more and more. And what happened?
I just want to kind of chime in to just give, because my first property I bought North Drive, I talk about in my book in 2002. That was a real loan. By the time I do my 8th home purchase, which was probably 2005 ish, the mortgage broker had me sign a blank form and said, "Don't worry about it." I mean, that's how it just got easier and easier. And like this fog a mirror thing, it's absolutely true. I mean, I literally signed a blank application form and it said, "Don't worry about it. We'll fill it out later." I'm like, really? This is what we're doing now? And that was crazy.
Yeah. And I mean, for a lot of individuals, let's just say that were not necessarily legal citizens or didn't have social security numbers, that was huge. They had loans instead of having a social security number, they were issuing TINs, temporary ID numbers. And so in the Hispanic community, this was, I mean, everyone did this. This was just how loans were done. So yeah, sure. Here's a temporary ID number and here's your loan. How much do you say you make? Okay, that works for us. Rock and roll. So,
or even worse. Oh, that's not quite enough. Oh, let me add some more.
right.
I heard that. Like, oh, you make, I don't know, 60 grand. Oh, I need you to make 72. Well, guess what? I make 72.
Yeah.
I was like,
And again,
what are we doing?
with a stated income loan, guys, you are literally stating your income. So you're a cashier, you don't make enough money. So you're a cashier who makes $100,000. Okay.
Okay.
And not to go too deep, but the lenders didn't give a crap. And the reason the lenders didn't give a crap is because they were selling them on Wall Street, and Wall Street had this insatiable desire because, again, when people are making money, people don't tend to ask questions. So as quick as the loans were being made, they were being sold off. And if the people buying the loans on Wall Street don't ask questions, you know, this guy who's been a loan officer for 2 months, he really doesn't give a crap. And this guy's being trained by a guy who's been doing the job for 9 months. So, and like this, I'm not even making this up. This isn't it's true. Yeah, I'm not exaggerating. So everyone was a loan officer. Everyone was making money. No one asked questions, and the ball kept going. So,
yeah. And then let's just, because I want this, people need to realize how crazy this environment was. So we've talked about the Nina loan and just that craziness. But as somebody who started 1031ing, because I was trying to buy my 9th house and the numbers didn't work. Yeah. Then they come out with these stupid 2 and 28 loans and neg am loans because of course pricing is here and they want to keep the party going. Right. They come out with these 2 and 28 loans where it's like 1.9% for the first 2 years and like 19%, wasn't quite that bad, but like 13% after that. And oh, by the way, you only got to get approved for the first 2 years because of course you're just going to refi at the end of 2 years. Right. Who the hell would want 13%? So first we do stated income. Everybody's through the door. Prices go up. Yeah. Now prices are so high, nobody can afford. So they do these stupid doctored loans. And now more people, it was just stupidity on stupidity on stupidity. And then then the whole, stripper has 5 homes and it's just, it was crazy.
And so, I mean, everything Michael just said is literal fact. I mean, this is not an embellishment, guys. This is, if you weren't alive for this time, it sounds like we're just talking out of our ass right now. But this is all what truly happened back in 2003 to 2006. So imagine a market that is inflated. So here's a big difference between things then and now, right? Housing back then created a hyper economy. Very different. Our economy was doing well and then housing went up. Back then, housing is what brought the economy going. So because housing was booming this economy, they kept, like Michael said, we got it more. So the way things started was that we gave anyone anything they wanted. Now, that created pricing going up. Well, now that pricing is going up, everyone wants in on the game. So imagine Bitcoin a year ago, right? Everyone has FOMO. So here's where things get a little bit nutty, right? In the beginning of the boom, what would happen is you would go, and you got to remember back then, new homes in Las Vegas were about the same price as resale homes. There wasn't this massive delta that we have today. So I did this a few times, and a lot of people did this a lot of times, but this was literally the legal scam. Is KB Home is building a new home sales track. They're going to release 8 homes on Saturday. On Saturday, you show up and there would literally be 300, 400, 500 people for 8 homes. They would have a lottery. Everyone puts their name in a hat. They draw out 8 names. You get lucky, you get drawn. Fantastic. You put up like $5,000 worth of earnest money. You put up nothing or $10,000 at the design center. And in a year, your home is built. Well, by the time your home was built, you cleared $150,000. You put a for sale by owner sign on the front yard, you had 30 offers. Those were investors who were buying that home, and then they would turn around and sell it in a year and make another $100,000. So a lot of savvy people would just go around putting their names in hats, giving the agent that worked at the builder, here's a envelope with $10,000 in it. Can you see that my client's name gets pulled? So suffice to say, the crazier things were, the crazier things became. Now, as pricing starting to become a little unaffordable, what they did to boost it was not only did you have no income, no assets, stated income, But now what we had was we had 0 down loans. So my first house was a 0 down loan. Now, the way they did 0 down loans was there was a few legit 0 down loans, but what was even more clever is you could take an 80-20 loan. So you'd have one loan for 80% of the mortgage and one loan for 20%. The 20% was at an exorbitant rate, but that's only 1/5 of your cost basis. Some of them were 90-10 loans. So they were coming up with all these crazy loans. Then you got to remember that second keyword, we had easy money and we had speculation. The reality was there was a ton of speculation. So if you're speculating, you're planning on selling within a few years anyways. So then when affordability became an issue, what they did was they started doing ARM loans, adjustable rate mortgages. And believe me when I tell you, I would say at least 50% of the deals being done, at least 50% were adjustable rate mortgages.
It's
so
a
you
fact, nationally speaking, in Vegas, I'm going to guess is higher. Nationally speaking, 50% of originations in 06 were these 2 and 28 ARMs.
Yeah.
It's a fact.
And,
it's a fact.
And I would, I don't quote me on it, but I would say more like 2/3, at least in Vegas, at least.
At least.
And, yeah. And these would range from 2-1 ARMs, 3-1 ARMs, 5-1 ARMs. The typical was a 5-1 ARM. So that means, let's say interest rates were at 5.5%. They would give you and guys, let's make this even worse. No, let's make this even worse. They were interest only loans.
Oh, interest. Oh,
you forgot that, right?
How about neg am? Remember those? Oh,
that came later, but we had interest only 5-1 ARM. So basically, you would have mortgage rates would be at 5.5%. You would get, say, a 4.5% 5-1 ARM. So you would have an interest rate at 4.5%, and you only had to pay the interest. It was an interest-only loan. So you're never touching the principal, but that made people afford damn near twice the home that they really could afford. So you had people buying homes that they couldn't qualify for, and then you had people who were qualified for, say, a $500,000 home going and buying $1 million home because it was an interest-only loan.
Why not?
To anyone watching this sounds like the stupidest crap you could ever imagine. But at the time, but this was in vogue. And you got to remember, when everyone's doing it, everyone feels like it's acceptable and okay. And again, you got to remember, they were pumping everyone with, hey, most people only live in their home for 5 years. You're going to sell it anyways.
You're going to sell it anyway.
You don't pay off anything in the first 5 years anyways. So enjoy this huge home that you can't afford, that you'll never sustainably be able to live in. And then if you buy $1 million home, if you buy a $500,000 home, maybe it'll be worth $750,000. So you'll clear $250,000. But imagine if you bought $1 million home, that'll be worth 1.5. Sell it, make the 500,000. You can go back, and the real home you can pay cash for now, and you're done in 5 years. What a dream, guys. What a dream. So what I'm alluding to is there was so much speculation. Where things get a little bit wonkier was, look, if I could make that much money on one home, what if I had 5 homes? So
that's where the speculation gets cubed or whatever, it goes up 10x because it worked. That was the problem, right? The speculation worked. And of course, the speculation works once. You just put more chips on the table, you do it again and again.
And so it's like Banana Republic, right? Like I used to literally forward these emails to my girlfriend because Banana Republic I would get 5 emails a week and it would be like, today only 40% off. Then tomorrow I'd get one for 30% off. And I'm like, well, screw you. I know tomorrow I'm going to get one for 40% off. Well, eventually Banana Republic couldn't sell a damn thing because we all knew that it was just a matter of time before I got 40% off. I would never pay full price there because I just have to wait till Tuesday and I'm getting 40% off. So back to this crazy market, what happened was every stripper, every cocktail waitress was also selling real estate or doing loans on the side. And they all owned 3, 4, 5 homes. I knew this guy that used to come in to my place of work before I got into real estate, and he was a valet driver on the strip, and he owned like 6 homes. And for a moment, he was worth like well over $1 million because of all this equity he had acquired in these homes with 0 down. So let's establish the fact that we were giving away money, which meant we were giving away homes. We were giving away homes to people who had never invested, who had no skin in the game. And remember, no skin in the game. If you're buying a home, zero down, and you're on an interest only loan, not only did you not put down a down payment, but you also have no equity from the jump. All of your equity is speculating that it's going to continue to accelerate and accelerate and accelerate. So this is why when we had an adjustment, the crash, this is why it plummeted so poorly. And here's where the contrast becomes. When you look at today, the difference is it wasn't that we had easy money, because you have to legitimately qualify, and qualifying is, I would stand behind it. I mean, there's no easy loans being given away anymore. So to some capacity, you have to have a real capacity to repay this mortgage, right? So that cuts out a lot of the fluff. And as far as investments, you got to have 20% down. That cuts out all these people who have no business owning multiple properties, because you have to have the capital to be able to do it, right? Now, what really got things going wasn't housing, it was the economy. Wall Street was kicking ass, Bitcoin was kicking ass. We came out of quarantine and everyone was flush with money. Everyone wanted to live in a better home because we had been cooped up for 3 months. Then you combine that with migration. It wasn't housing, it was the economy that created this housing, and it was the pandemic that really made people migrate. So now the difference is, what put people into more expensive properties, what made people go hyper, is because interest rates were so absurdly low. So it wasn't basically free money, it was the fact that we had great interest rates. So it wasn't easy money, it was cheap money there. Now, the other factor is, back in 2006, 2005, 2004, 2003, there were no hedge funds buying rental properties. That didn't happen until the crash. So very, very big difference between some valet driver who's holding on by a thread with 5 homes and Blackstone Group, who owns thousands of homes and has no desire to sell any of them. So a huge difference there. Now, here's where the crash then happened, and here's why it's different now. Back then, the problem was you had people flipping these, buying and flipping, buying and flipping, buying and flipping. And then you had, at the end, you had all these investors that had speculated plans to sell the property in 2, 3, 4, 5 years and cash out. No one ever intended to keep these properties. The sole intention was to make the equity, dump it, cash out within X amount of time. So you buy a house with no money down, and you don't have a plan B. Your plan A has to work, and that plan A is, I'm going to make a ton of money and I'm going to dump this property in 2 years and be rich. The problem with this was, as the prices of homes went up, the rents didn't really go up as well. Because why would you rent? Why would you rent? You could buy for free. Like, you don't need money. You could buy a house. It's no different than renting. So what ended up happening was, you had guys that owned 4 or 5 properties, and they were losing $500 a month on each property. And they said, hey, that's fine. Who cares if I lose $6,000 next year? I can afford to lose $12,000 for 2 years, because I'm going to make $250,000 when I sell it in 2 years. Here's the problem is, you don't ever go into an investment not having a plan B or an exit strategy. You have to, things don't work out. It's guaranteed that there's going to be times where things are not working out. Then what? So if it didn't make sense at the point in time that you bought the property, you're really, really, really out there speculating that everything will magically come together. So what ended up happening was, everything peaked in 2006. Now, the truth of the matter is, here's a difference between then and now. Our market turned like that. Literally within the span of 6 weeks, I would say, it just went to crickets. It was overnight that the market completely changed. And part of that reason was because every 3 weeks we were getting these rate hikes, and it just got worse and worse and worse. Look how quickly interest rates have changed. I mean, we doubled in not too many months. Back then it was different. So when we peaked in 2006, it was kind of like a plateau. It was a really weird time, because there was so much speculation and things kind of plateaued out. And you got to remember, nowadays, big time investors, what are they doing? They're building multi-unit apartment complexes and renting them. That's the big commercial move, right? Is multifamily. Well, back then, It wasn't so much the multifamily. It was just buy a bunch of homes. And what we were doing here in Las Vegas, which I mean hasn't been done since, is we had the Manhattanization of Las Vegas, which was the stupidest idea to begin with from the beginning. We were building all these mega high-rise towers. The problem is this: when you build a subdivision of homes, let's say you have 140 homes in the subdivision and you release 8 homes at a time. Let's say half of those 8 homes are for investors and half are owner occupants. Well, 4 people are going to move into the home and then 4 people are going to sell the home the day it's built. There's going to be people that are going to absorb those homes, and that's fine. Well, the problem is when you build a high-rise condo tower and there's 400 units and you complete the tower in 1 month and everyone is done, you can't have 200 units put on the market. And what Las Vegas completely underestimated, and I hand to whatever God you believe in, I literally thought it was the stupidest idea. I was the only contrarian that thought this was so stupid because Vegas is not Manhattan. So the problem was that all these projects, half the people buying them were never going to live there. They were only speculating to turn it around. Well, right at the time that all these projects finally were built, that's when the market kind of plateaued out. So the market plateaus out. Then you have all these mega high rises that are all being dumped at the same time. And really, there was never a demand there to begin with. So here you have the only 200 people that ever wanted to live there are living there. No one else wants to live there. And now you got another 200 units that no one can sell. Then, new home prices were getting out of control. Things were changing. And the second the market plateaued, guess what? If you're an investor, well, I'm not going to buy that new home because how am I going to make any money?
Yeah.
The market's plateaued. So all of a sudden people just stopped buying and things went really, really, really quiet. And the truth is things were really quiet for a while, a very long time, where we're going, wow, things just kind of slowed down. And then I remember there was one morning, I tried to find the date, but I believe it was sometime in 2007. One morning I woke up and Pulte lowered their prices 30% in 2 subdivisions. And that was the straw that broke the camel's back. Right there, that signaled viciously the end of this cycle. And that was unheard of. No one ever lowered the price in that way. They lowered the price, then everyone started lowering prices. If you wanted to buy a new house, they would throw in a brand new Honda. They would put it in a backyard. And really, the demand had already been saturated. And in fact, there really wasn't a real demand because it was all investors. So now no investors are in and everyone else is locked. So now what? If you're an investor and you bought a property 6 months ago and you're losing $500 a month, and the property not only is not going up, but now it's starting to go down, what are you going to do? So you can try to sell it and cut your losses, maybe lose 20, 30 grand. You can try, but if you're in a lease, good luck. And who's going to buy? Who's going to buy that with 9 months, 6 months left on a lease that's losing money? So basically what happened was overnight, after about 9 months, things just really were at an impasse. Inventory started swelling because everyone wanted to cash out and no one could cash out. So we had a glut of inventory. Now, before we get to foreclosures, what happened was short sales. When I got into the business in 2003, one of my first questions was, what is a short sale? I saw it on the forum in the MLS and I said, what's a short sale? And I asked 5 people and 5 people said, I
no idea.
I think it's like if you sell for less, but I don't really know. Wait, shit, don't worry about it. It's not going to happen. And so that was it. So all of a sudden here we are in 2007 and people cannot sell their home. So this was the beginning of short sales. And so in the very beginning, I did a ton of short sales. And then I saw that this is going to end up badly. This is going to end up in foreclosures. And that's when I started reaching out to banks and became an REO broker and selling foreclosures. And you have to remember, the reason these properties were foreclosing was because we got into this unsustainable business model. If you're a regular person, here you are living in $1 million home. You can kind of afford it right now, but you got to look in the mirror and go, when that adjustable rate mortgage is up, and I have to pay a higher interest rate, and I have to pay the I have to pay the principal and the interest. I can't afford this house. Now, when that house
that was a big difference, because I saw it in my market as well, and it's very different than today. Is we did plateau, right? They did all these funny things with loan. They kept pushing prices higher. Eventually, even that broke. It stayed the same, and then from where I was sitting, I didn't see it like in your example. Pulte came out and whacked prices. That was kind of the day. I didn't see one of those. But what happened is, as loans started to reset, as that 2 and 28, the 2 years expired, you can almost clock the inventory hitting the market, because people could afford when it was at the, the first 2 years, but once it reset, they were done. Like, I'm out.
Yeah, guys, right now, go grab a calculator, and what rates are at 7%. Go make a 5% mortgage interest only and see how dramatic the payment difference is. So again, and you got to remember, this was like agreed as good time. So not only were these bad loans, but people were maxing like literally to the absolute limit of what their budget could possibly afford. So yeah, you go from thinking you're going to be a millionaire and a genius in 5 years to realizing you can't afford your mortgage. As soon as this arm resets, you definitely can't afford it. You can't sell your house. You never had equity to begin with because you bought it with zero down. Now your house, let's just say your house is down 25%. I mean, if you bought $1 million home and you're down $250,000 and you bought that thing with no money down, you really, one, who has an extra $250,000 to blow? And two, why? So what started to happen at that point was we had all these short sales. So everyone was basically just walking away from their homes. And then the banks wouldn't work with people.
Strategic default. Remember that? Strategic default?
I mean, that was huge, guys. Strategic default was the term. So think about it. Whether you could afford your mortgage or not afford your mortgage, when you see your neighbor sell their home and you're down $250,000, whatever. And then the banks wouldn't work with you unless you were, this is true. The banks
That's another one. Yeah.
The banks would not consider a short sale unless you were delinquent on your mortgage. So
not even, you had to be, well, again, this is just from memory. I remember them saying we wouldn't even talk to you unless you were 90 days
late. Right. You had to be in default. So, all right, cool.
Guess what? We're going.
Guess what? We'll be 90 days late soon. Cool. That's right. No mortgage payment. So at first it went from a necessity of people just not paying their mortgage, not paying their HOA, not paying their taxes, and initiating the short sale, to it got to the point where now I'm down 50 damn percent. All my equity got wiped out. And why should I stay here? So if I'm a doctor or an attorney, if I'm making tons of money and I can easily afford my house, the question is why?
Why?
From a financial model, it doesn't make sense. You know what? It's going to take you a year to foreclose on me. I'm not going to pay my mortgage. I'm going to save all that money for a year. And then guess what? If I have to, it's a 3-year waiting period. I'll buy the house across the street for half the price that I bought my house for. And guess what? The down payment for that house comes from all the money that I didn't pay for this year's mortgage. So it was,
I don't know if you remember this, but I've actually gone back and looked at it. Las Vegas, San Francisco, and I think Miami, the average time to foreclose was 900 days or greater. You could stay in your home literally for 3 years.
In the beginning, we were running 9 months to a year. If you played it right, it was a year. We passed AB 284. Literally, probably my first viral video of all time was September in 2011. I did a video called AB 284. We passed a legislative bill that basically halted foreclosures. And I went in, that's how I became known for what I do, is because I said, okay, guys, well, here's the deal. The only homes that we can purchase are foreclosures, because that was true. It was either a short sale or a foreclosure. And if we stop foreclosing on properties, that means we don't have properties to purchase.
Yeah.
And as crazy as it sounds, prices are going to go up because we won't have homes to buy. And in spring of 2012, that's exactly what happened. And that's how I got in the Wall Street Journal. And because I predicted something that to me was a no-brainer, but sounded ludicrous to most people because we were in the crux of a horrible housing crisis. But again, guys, like going back to it, that crash occurred because of multitude of factors, but most of it being people biting off so much more than they could ever chew that they didn't qualify for, and then magnifying that 2, 3, 5 times with other properties that they couldn't afford, that there was no plan B for. And look, when everyone starts dumping, like we always talk about the race to the bottom, that is the most heightened example of a race to the bottom, because literally I am not going to make any money off of this transaction. I couldn't give a rat's ass anymore. In this situation, it's a question of how much money am I walking away with. I was hoping to walk away with 150. I guess now I'm going to walk away with 125, maybe 100. That's completely different than if you're not going to get any money anyways, fuck it. I don't care. Like
That's
literally,
fair. Yeah.
who cares? And that's where we were. Now, the contrast with today is, it came out the other day that 90% of mortgages are under 5% interest rate. So, I mean, most people are locked into a wonderful, wonderful rate. It's not worth giving up. And I mean, no one's going to be refinancing for quite some time because of these interest rates. And you got to remember, if you're an investor, anyone who's an investor, you put 20% down, you've got skin in the game. And why on earth would any investor buy a property where they're losing $500? Like, we know better at this junction. No one's going to do that. So now look at it the other way around. You bought a property 3 years ago. You've got a couple $100,000 worth of equity in the property. You're making $700 a month on your rent. And yeah, the market's going down. And yeah, it's probably going to go down 20%. Maybe some neighborhoods go down 30%. But why would I take that capital hit when I'm making $700 a month? There's no pressure for me.
Just wait.
And rents just keep
wait.
going up. So not only does it make sense for me right now, it's only going to make more sense and more sense and more sense and more sense. There's no reason why I should sell short when this is just a cycle. And then you have all this institutional money, all these hedge funds. Yeah. Their plan was never to sell these properties.
They're strong hands, not weak hands.
Right. So they're not going to unload. So this is,
and they're going to buy, right? You get a 15 or 20% discount. They'll be back buying. Let's not get it twisted. They're
right. And
they got more money to spend.
And that's a different topic as far as when and how is this market going to turn around? And that's really what it's going to boil down to, is there will be a moment where rates drop, where prices get to a price that's so low that, again, it makes sense all day long. Even if it goes down another 10%, my cap rate is so good, who cares? Yeah. So again, this market is so different because you have real investors who don't need to sell their property. You have homeowners with plentiful amounts of equity. Why would I throw that away? Why would I sell my house when I'm locked in at 3% to go buy this house that might go down or might have an issue and buy at 7%? So this is so different. And like I told you, back then, it was like, who cares? Just let it go. And our inventory went through the roof. Now, while our inventory has gone through the roof in relative terms to where we were, the difference is right now we've pretty much plateaued and we're at 8,000 homes. We have, what I think it was like a 4.7 month supply of inventory, only because we're not selling homes right now. Now, you got to remember, guys, let's say the Fed's reverse course next year and rates drop below 5% and we've already taken a 20% hit. Overnight, it's going to be quick. Overnight, it just takes a few investors to go, all right, that's the bottom, start buying. Normally, if we sell 3,000 homes a month, having 8,000 homes in the market, that's not even a 3-month supply. That is a seller's market. So as terrible as this market is right now, it's very, very likely to have a brisk turnaround because we don't have that much inventory. So it's different.
When I look at the situation today, and it'd be interesting to get your opinion. Again, last crisis was 5 years, peak to trough.
Right.
It won't be 5 years time. The Fed will pivot, I'm guessing, sometime between that. But even if they don't, I don't see the cascading of inventory coming because, again, what I saw that last mile in my market was every time the 2 and 28 changed, that was just a short sale coming.
Right.
And we have 90% of loans below 5% fixed for 30 years. There's not this arm reset coming next year or the year after. So I just don't see distressed sales coming.
And I follow the notice of defaults every single day. I have a spreadsheet. I can literally tell you every single day what the notice of defaults were going back an entire decade. The reason I no longer cover that on my channel is because the numbers are so small that it's not even relevant. And
17. Woohoo!
yeah, no, literally, like every day it's like 8 here, 12 there. And just because you have a notice of default, half of those are going to get worked out. So like if we pulled right now, there's about 20 foreclosures in all of Las Vegas out there. It's not worth talking about. And you can't create foreclosures without notices of default. So I can tell you there is no flood coming for at least a year because we don't even have enough notices of default to do it. And like we discussed, why would you default on your property? Unless you literally bought your property in March, you're going to have equity. It's just a question of how much money can you walk away with if you sell. But the vast majority of people are going to be able to sell and walk away with some money. And the reason it took 5 years last time was because everyone just said 50%, I'm out.
I'm out.
Keep this damn thing. So if it takes 3 years to foreclose, you're like, all right, what do I have to do to stretch this out for 3 years? Because if I don't have to make a mortgage payment, if my mortgage payment is $2,000 a month, I can save $75,000. Yeah, it was $72,000 in 3 years. Yeah, sounds good to me, dude. I'll live here for free. I'll pocket 72 G's. I'll wait 3 years. I'll get an FHA loan, and I got $72,000 to put down and fix up. Sounds like a great strategy.
Absolutely.
You're not going to have people foreclosing, which means it's not going to take years and years for this inventory to clear through. We're going to clear through things quick.
Yeah, the other thing I think is very interesting. This is actually very different than last time. I'm assuming it's Vegas too, but active inventory, right? Active inventory last time exploded. Your active inventory is up today, to 8,000, but you're plateauing. It's not compounding over and over, and inventory may even fall heading into the end of the year. Didn't inventory last time get to like 12 or 14 or 16,000?
Yeah, 15, 16,000 sounds about right. That peak would probably be somewhere around 2009, 2010.
Probably.
I didn't really start tracking until my prediction came to fruition, which was like in June of 2012. I'm looking, the first entry I ever had was 3,800 homes in June of 2012. And that was because, as I predicted, if you stop foreclosures, basically you stop the flow of inventory. So whatever we have to sell is all we have to sell. And we burned through that in 6 months, and that's where we ended up.
Yeah. Again, the whole idea is, I think, inventory in Vegas, you basically know who needs to sell versus who wants to sell. There's a lot of people that are just going to sit back and wait, right? They don't have to sell, right? They got a 3.1% interest. It's fixed for 30 years. It doesn't reset. Who cares if rates are 8%? I'm good. I'm at 3.1, lickety split. And oh, by the way, rents are going up. So it's such a different time. And again, I love what you said about easy money. It's sort of like easy money times speculation versus what we just went through was just cheap money, and then cheap money and migration. It's just a very different equation today.
That's a huge difference. Is we're selling properties to people who want to live here, and we're selling properties to real investors who have long-term goals. That is so sustainable. Very, very, very different than giving away money to people who are over consuming, who have no business consuming, who are short-term speculators. Again, when you look back at how all of this came to be, you have to be an absolute moron to look at this impetus and not see that there is going to be an epic crash. I mean, in hindsight, I was a young man when all this happened. I jumped into real estate when I was in my mid 20s, and I'm being tutored by guys in their mid to late 20s, and it was the blind leading the blind. It was just it was like boiler room. All we knew was that we were going to make money and everything's going to work out. And that's not it's not a great path, when you're talking about
party ends eventually.
A national economy at stake, probably not the best way to go. And this is just very, very, very different. We don't have the ticking time bomb of these adjustable rate mortgages like we did before. And like Michael said, look, I may have wanted to sell my home, but at this point, I mean, why am I going to take a 7% mortgage when I got a 3% mortgage? Yeah, it'd be nice to have the new home, but looks like we're going into a recession. Let's just be grateful for what we have and let's just sit down for a little bit.
Yeah.
And for those of you that didn't live through the recession, that was actually one of the greatest times of my life, not because it was a good time, but because it taught me such valuable lessons as far as being a little bit more humble. And, you know, just because you're on top of the world today doesn't mean you can't get knocked off with one swift kick in the ass. And how you live during the boom and your ability to have any level of restraint is ultimately going to help going through those downtimes, and your ability to not squander money and to cut the fat and to survive these downtimes is really going to improve your recovery time to get back up there and make money and recover. And so, you know, for anyone out there who's, you know, having a difficult time, you know, just take this as, you know, it's not the end of the world. Things always do come back, and study what happened, because you know, that old saying, those who ignore history are forced to relive it. And this is a really good game plan, because a lot of what happened is going to happen as far as recovery. You know, there will be a span of 1 to 2 months where all of a sudden, bam, the market is back. We're going to go down until the moment it comes up. The second it comes up, usually that's when things just head for the fences. So knowing this type of behavior, it means that once that bottom hits, you jump in hard and you beat the crowd. But again, you know, this is so different than last time. It feels terrible. It is terrible. But at the end of the day, you know, we will get through this and we will recover. But this is nowhere near as catastrophic as, you know, 2008. It's not.
Yeah. It's 2023, 2022 is not '08 on repeat. Vegas is not going to go from what I wrote it down, 315 to 109, 65% haircut in 5 years. It won't be a moment. It won't be a month. It won't be a quarter. It's a slow bleed, but there will be a point where this just baselines, and then, you know, we will grow from there. So yeah, it's just not set up. There's almost nothing set up this time like last time.
Yeah. And I mean, I would look at this more as a cleansing, if anything else. You know, this market just got dirty. I mean, the prices got whacked out of control. Some neighborhoods went through the roof, some were more moderate. We just had lunacy. And at some point you got to dial this back. We got to establish some baseline values for communities. And so as much as this sucks, this is ultimately a good thing, because we're going to get back to where price levels should be for specific neighborhoods and communities, and then we can move on from there. And hopefully it won't be ludicrous again. Hopefully we can have a modest incline, something more sustainable. But
I agree.
We'll see.
Yeah. Well, thank you for doing this. We will miss you at the event. Thank you for
guys.
giving us this time. It's wonderful. If somebody wanted to buy in Vegas or talk about the Vegas market, how do they reach out? How do they follow you?
Yeah. So if you like this content, and actually this is probably a preview, I'm probably going to make a more curated version of this, because I think this is a great topic for a lot of people. So keep your eyes on that. I'm going to try to get that out in the next couple of weeks. But check out my site on YouTube, the Lebo Group. So YouTube, the Lebo Group. And, you know, look, if you're interested, if you have questions, concerns, you want to invest, you want to divest, you can reach me directly at 702-257-LEBO. 257 Lebo, or just Google me, man. Brian Lebo. I'm all over. You can find me, Brian Lebo, and hit that Google button. You'll be all right.
There you go. Folks, there's a lot of One Rental at a Time fans that are reaching out to Brian. Even Matt, the lumberjack landlord, is using him. So he is the realtor to the stars, as I like to say. So Brian, thank you so much for doing this. We'll miss you, but enjoy the wedding.
Thanks, guys. Deuces.